Well, hi everyone, it's Pete here from the Pain Toolkit, and welcome to the fifth Pain Toolkit in Conversation. And as you can see from the screen, and if people are watching, they're listening to the audio, we've got a couple of new people with us, presenters with us tonight, and a couple of people are missing tonight who they can't make it for one reason or another. But yeah, so welcome. And in this conversation, it's about having difficult conversations. But anyway, we'll come back to that in a minute. So can I ask, I think everybody knows who I am, or hopefully they know who I am or what I do. But can I just go around the board and ask people to just introduce yourself, a little bit about what you do, and then we'll move on to the next one. So Virginia, I'm looking at you at the moment. So Virginia, can you tell us who you are, where you come from, what you do?
Absolutely. Thanks, Pete. Thanks for letting me go up first. This is great. It's such a pleasure to be here. I am from Canada, but I'm joining you today from San Diego. I am at the San Diego Pain Summit. What a wonderful opportunity to be here and have so many discussions about pain and pain self-management. So I'm also the executive director and president of the People with Pain Network, and we support people living with pain for peer support. And within Canada, I have many roles. I'm with Pain Canada, National Advisory Committee, Canadian Pain Society, do some education with the local universities, and anything that I can to bring awareness about pain and pain self-management. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks very much. Sue, can I move on to you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Susan Reid-Schellinck. I'm an occupational therapist, also from Canada, on the far west coast, Vancouver Island. And I work primarily with people who have a high level of central pain or mostly complex regional pain syndrome. And I'm really happy to be here and looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts.
Thanks very much. And Toby?
Thank you, Pete. Hi, everybody. Toby Newton-John. I'm in Sydney, in Australia. I am a clinical psychologist by background, but now just a very small clinical practice, mostly an academic, in psychological research and running an allied health school. And I guess my clinical work over the years has been, and research work really sort of focused on social aspects of pain and thinking about how networks influence people's experience of pain. And so supported self-management sits really strongly with there. And I think this is a really, really important agenda, and I'm glad. I think we're all appreciative of Pete's tireless energy to get this thing rolling, because we're going to look back on this period and think, what were we doing for all that time? But anyway, this is the start of big stuff. So thanks, Pete.
Thanks, Toby. And Amy?
Hi, Pete. Thanks again for inviting me in. I always love these chats. I'm coming from the center of the United States in Illinois, and I am a chronic pain coach. I have my own history with pain and am now pain-free, which is pretty cool. So I help coach other people to live bigger lives with or without pain, and have been in the patient advocacy space for about 10 years now.
Thanks, Amy. And Helen?
Thanks so much, Pete, and everyone else for including me tonight. It's wonderful to be here. I am Helen Room. I'm an occupational therapist on the east coast of South Africa. And my work is supporting people with persistent pain and fatigue. I have a special interest in fibromyalgia, and I co-facilitate a fibromyalgia group with someone living with fibromyalgia. And I do just love what Pete's doing, just the importance of self-management, just wanting to amplify the voices of people living with pain and support their inclusion in our decision-making processes, in our work. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Helen. Jerry?
I'm just here to meet people from around the world. I love this. I love every week coming here and hearing where everybody's from. I do. I just love it. My name is Jerry Durham, currently in California, probably just about 2.5 hours north of Virginia. Virginia, Mcintyre, not the state of Virginia. Yeah. I am a physio by training, but it stops there. I spend my time and my energy on how to train and bring other team members of the healthcare teams into this world of helping patients to be successful in their journey, in their healthcare journey. So front desk people, back office people. And I've got to toot my horn. It's March 1st. I just had my name put on a paper, an opinion paper, looking at the exact thing we're talking about with trying to decrease nocebo in healthcare organizations through incorporating the whole team. So needless to say, when that rolled out, and my name is next to people that I've actually used their research to build out some of my programs. So it's been a huge, exciting week for me in shall we say, proof of process a little bit, because we all know that I brought it up here, and I'm sorry if I'm taking a little more time, that 15 minutes, 30 minutes with the provider, and I'm like, right, the whole rest of the world, that's what self-management is about. What do we do outside of this, right? So I really enjoy these conversations because I really believe this is a big part of the solution for people in general in healthcare, especially people in pain. So sorry, I stole a little more time. You can deduct it off my talking time.
Oh, we will. No, good stuff. Always good to hear from you. Last but not least, Hem, all the way down there in New Zealand.
Yeah, kia ora everyone. Good morning here for us. It's Saturday here. So joining from Wellington in New Zealand. So I'm a physiotherapist by training. I have two jobs. So I work as an academic here at the University of Otago in Wellington, and I also work as a pain management physiotherapist in a tertiary pain service. So most of the work I do, focuses on equity, cultural aspects of pain, and working with people with lived experience. And I have a very biased philosophy of science that nothing without us about us without us. So so most of my work is all co-designed in collaboration with people with lived experience, and also people from indigenous and culturally and linguistically diverse communities with pain. Essentially, the people who we don't read about in research papers, or people who I don't see in my clinical practice.
Thanks, Hem.
Thanks for inviting, Pete. I'm looking forward to.
That's it. Right, thanks for joining our little group now. I think our little group's becoming a big group, and I think what I like about it is what I try to think about is we're coming from lots of different angles, in when it comes to sort of dealing with pain management, because we all think, the thing is, as I learned, I couldn't do it on my own. I needed others to learn other skills like managing my pain, etc. But I think some of you may recognise Hammond and Sue from the last conference that we did. I think it's about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and but Helen, I know Helen from through social media, and we did an interview recently, and I do see you as like the South African, version of a Bronny, like who we know. So I know that you're going to fit in with us really, really well. So good stuff. So difficult conversations, and I suppose really, I think I've been thinking about this for the last few days, really, and about it, and I felt if I sort of kick it off a bit, I think Dave Flusker suggested, I'm not quite sure who suggested this conversation from last time, anyway. But I was thinking about conversations, and for me, it's that I think people with pain, I think when we have our conversations with a member of our healthcare team, we don't prepare very well. But I think also it's vice versa as well. I mean, I've experienced in recent years, as I've become an older person, where I've had to engage the health services a bit more, how poor the conversations have been. I've been ignored, and as I walked into a room, when I had to see a healthcare professional about my eyesight a few years ago, it just I walked in, he never said hello. Whoever sit down, I just he just ignored me, and I knew when I sat down, I thought this is going to be fun. And also I think when I was being diagnosed with the prostate cancer, that the urologist was telling me that I've got, you know, prostate cancer, but there was a nurse who kept coming in and out, in and out, in and out. And every time she's opened the door, me and we're both looking around, so well, who's that? And then apparently he told me I had. Anyway, long story short, it was a difficult conversation for him and also for me because of the interruptions, etc. But I think communication seems to just be a problem for both healthcare professionals and people who live with persistent pain, because we both struggle. You know, we don't. There doesn't seem to be a common denominator, and I remember recently. I posted something on well, X, as they call it now, or Twitter to us old school, and the guy there, I posted he was I didn't know he was a healthcare professional, but he replied back and with 4 points, and the first two I understood, but then he went into medical mode. And I just said, well, I know I understand the first two, but can you explain what the last two mean? He never replied. So for me, you know, there seems to be that there's a little bit of a disconnect. So there's going to be, I guess, difficult conversations between us. Like so. Anyway, that's my couple of bobs as we say here. So who would like to start us off?
I will, if you don't mind, Peter, if no one else is super eager. I just wanted to touch on one thing you'd said about, you know, whenever we have a conversation with someone, especially if it's a medical professional, we have something we want to tell the medical professional, and the medical professional has something they want to tell us. So I think one of the things that can help is making sure it can kind of help and kind of hinder. I always make sure they've got everything off of their plate first, because I think it's really hard to remember anything someone tells you when you've got things you want to explain. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I want to tell you about my week. I want to tell you about my day and the health. I know I've been guilty of this many times. Like, oh, I have something to fix that. And you want to sort of jump in there and go. But we have to hold on. The way it kind of can bite you sometimes, which is luckily for me is fine with my time, is often the very last thing that someone says in a session is a really difficult conversation and a really long conversation. Anytime that someone's brought up suicidality to me, it's been the very last, okay, well, that's, you know, anything else you want to, time's almost up. And that's when it comes up. And like I said, luckily for me, I can control my time quite well. But that's a tough one, I find. I don't know if we have a solution, if anyone has thoughts on how we can, you know, maybe how we can recognize if someone has something difficult they want to say, or how we can maybe bring that up earlier or easier.
Pete, I just want to, I mean, we're just going to sort of jump around here, aren't we? That's the nature of these conversations.
It's conversation.
Organic. Something you said earlier made me really reflect, and this is more thinking about as clinicians and difficult conversations as a clinician, is the idea that from your examples of being interrupted or no eye contact or not being, is that I think clinicians get really stuck often on what they're saying, what are the right words, what's the right time, whatever, to the exclusion of the context in which you're saying it. And I would suggest that if you get the context right, then it really matters much less which words you chose or which order you put them in. And equally, if you don't get the context right, it doesn't matter how brilliantly and eloquently you phrase the word, whatever, you know, your patient who feels totally disrespected, totally disregarded, totally invalidated, the words aren't going to land no matter how well you do them. So I want to put in a plug for clinicians thinking much more about the so-called soft skills, the warmth, the positive regard, that kind of stuff that we trot the words out and they're a bit trite. But to your examples where they're totally not present, it's such an awful interaction with the healthcare provider. It just undermines the whole thing. So I would sort of backtrack and think we got to get the context right. And as a clinician, it's on you to find the energy and find the empathy and find the capacity to give this person the best of you in this interaction, whether it's 15 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. Not focus on your technique so much. Yes, it's important, but it just really struck me that when you're walking into a situation like that, it's almost impossible for that outcome to be a good one. And I think we don't pay enough attention to that context stuff.
Yeah.
Helen.
Yeah, just in response to both of you, Toby and Sue, just Toby, I think you're talking about the tone and matching the tone of people as well. I often think of just regulation, you know, how we regulate and co-regulate with other people. But Sue, something you were saying made me think about how I've started, well, for a while now, I've been practicing this thing of at the end of a conversation, asking the person, is there something you wish I had asked you and you want to tell me? You know, that kind of question. Is there something I didn't ask you and you want to, you know, you want to tell me? Because I realize that when I am asking questions, I'm already steering the conversation in a certain direction. I'm getting the answers I am asking questions to, but I might not be asking the question that is going to actually help somebody tell me what they really want to tell me.
Virginia, when it was a great idea of raising hands, but you know, I've just typed it out in a message there. If you want to jump in and say something, perhaps raise a hand, and then there won't be the silences. So go, Virginia.
I kind of like where Sue got to, and I think Sue got to remember too, when you get to the end of a conversation and they bring up this difficult thing and you're like, oh my God, you know, where am I going to go with it? But I think you really realize is you've got to in a conversation have people opening to you, like kudos, because as someone who lives with pain, and something we often bring up in our support groups is how do we have these conversations? We have people come in and talk to our members about how do we advocate for ourselves, because we're not even opening the door to have a conversation. You're opening the door. So that's the first step, because often when people with pain will bring up chronic pain, that's it. It's not acknowledged and it's pushed to the side. So we often now will tell people, okay, if you're going to talk to your clinician about chronic pain, do not bring anything else up, because that'll be the thing that won't be spoken about. So if you're getting to that part, kudos, because you've had a conversation about pain, because that's what we talk about. Just don't bring anything else up, because pain is pushed to the back end.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Amy?
I keep forgetting I'm muted. The idea of matching tone and medical jargon made me think of a quick story that kind of illustrates those things and how I, as kind of a spicy patient, handled it. But I was having some neck pain. I got sent to a neurologist, got sent to a pain management doc, and doc was explaining that I was going to need a double level disc replacement. They were going to cut through the front of my neck, spread it open, replace the discs. Like, he was describing the procedure to me, and I was like, whoa, stop. And I at least had enough agency to actually ask him to stop. And we had a good rapport, but I was like, this is not, there was so much medical jargon in there. I barely understood what you were saying past cut my neck open. Kind of got lost a little after that. And I used to work with high school kids, and he happened to have a high school daughter. And I said, how would you like it if I walked into your living room, didn't even sit down, and was like, your daughter's doing cocaine and she's pregnant and she's slept with like 5 guys in the high school? And he was like, why would you do that? And I'm like, well, because I have a tendency to need to tell parents these things in my line of work. Is that pleasant? And he was like, no, that's so jarring. And I said, yeah, that's what you just did to me, and it's not pleasant. And now I'm terrified and do not want to go back to the neurosurgeon. How are we going to fix this? And we ended up having a lovely conversation. He ended up sending me a thank you card, and apparently that conversation changed things. But I think from a patient perspective, sometimes our healthcare professionals are so ingrained and so used to the things that they're doing because they do it every day, that sometimes we need to have the agency to say, stop, I don't understand, or I need you to explain that a different way, or you're scaring the tar out of me. Can we try this again? And I think that that's incumbent upon the person receiving the information to do sometimes.
Thanks, Amy. Amy, you got your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Amy, for sharing that story, because that must have been an enlightening experience for the pain doc. And I think yeah, when patients give feedback that way, I think that's equivalent to like 1,000 books or 1,000 articles or something. And I want to share another story where I went to my GP for something, and so I want as a patient, and I've done my research, and I prepared, because you usually get like 15-20 minutes with your GP, so, and I'm paying for it as well. And so I thought I'll here are my questions, here's my research. So I had a conversation, he did an examination, and he said, okay, this is what it is, and you have two options: the non-drug option, you can do this and this, or here is another drug option, and here's the side effects of the drugs. And then I said, doc, I'm a physio, so I'm going to go for the non-drug option first, and then we'll see how it goes. And then he says, yeah, that's a good idea. I was thinking about that too. And then he writes his thingy, and then he prints something, and then he gives a little script to me. Here you go, here's a script for your medication, just in case. And I was like, I came out in the room, and I had this little piece of paper with me, and the pharmacy is just next door. So I was like, we had this conversation. We thought he's a nice guy. Like, we discussed his options, and then he gives both. And because I have the script, I'm more likely to go and get the drug than try the non-drug option first. So that's sort of, I thought I would share that, because the well-intended conversations, I don't know, sometimes it can, he must have thought like he's had a really good clinical consultation, but I never feedback, this is what I feel. And that's the bit I find fascinating as a researcher. I'm always critiquing and reflecting and getting feedback from what I do and how we do. And as Jerry said, like, to get a paper published, it has to go through n number of peer review to get to a journal. Whereas as a clinician, I can write a report, nobody can question me, and I can I can have like a brief conversation with a client, and I can make my report, and then it just goes in, and that's it. So what I was trying to say is, long and short, as a clinician, you have a lot more power to do what you want without being peer reviewed or critiqued or challenged, in a way, I say. But as a researcher, you're always uncertain, and you're not sure. So I find this sort of duality very interesting. Yeah, I'll just put it out there. Thank you.
Helen?
Just something else that I'm hearing in your story there is how, as clinicians, we struggle with the difficult conversations. We struggle with the difficult subject of people's pain and suffering, and we just want to do something. We have that powerless feeling, and so we might have heard somebody, and we're hearing them, but we're also overwhelmed by our own feeling, and we're not reflecting on that well, maybe. And out of that powerlessness, we just want to give something. We want to offer something. And so it's our own emotion making us deaf to what's actually going on with the person in front of us and what they're actually requesting of us. It's that old thing of, if you go to a doctor, they're going to offer you pills. If you go to a surgeon, they're going to offer you the knife. You give what you have instead of necessarily what the person's asking you for. And for me, it's just a lesson in that constant self-reflection of actually what's going on in me, and am I just trying to deal with my own sense of powerlessness about what's happening with this person in front of me.
When I worked in the NHS some years ago, we worked on a program called the Expert Patients Program, and part of the program was about how to prepare for seeing a healthcare professional. And we used to do they used to call them like free thinking sessions. Like, so what are some good ways to prepare? You know, we had some sort of set things already out, but then we used to do a free thinking, and used to write it up on the flip chart stand. What are some good ways to interact with healthcare professionals? And I tell you what, the ideas that come up from the people, the people who are attending the program were brilliant. Ones I always remember is that instead of prepare the healthcare professional for my appointment. So, one dude said he would write to them, and with a couple of, just say, I'm coming to see you on the 1st of March at 10 o'clock in the morning, doctor. And which might be a week or two, prior to that, and he was writing it 2 weeks before he see the doctor, and I want to discuss this with you. And so it gives the healthcare professional a bit of a heads up on being prepared, so the doctor may think, well, hang on a minute, yeah, so he's going to talk. I think it would be like a good idea to have a blood, send him for a blood test first or something like that. So I think in a way, I think we people with pain, people with long-term condition or a health problem, if we get the chance to give a bit of a heads up to, be better prepared, in other words, is to, before we go to the appointment, and I try to do that myself now, and I always think what I learned as well is put myself in, in your shoe, the healthcare professional shoes, and as we used to remind them on the course, healthcare professionals human as well, perhaps they may be having a crap day or something, they've been up all night because the dog's barking next door, or the child's not sleeping, etc. And they may not be on their game, sort of thing, so but you're not robots, in other words, so it's being a bit flexible. But the other thing is being not being in charge, but be as an equal partner, as they say, and I do, and it has changed. I mean, I had to see the John, the nurse down at the surgery the other day about my blood pressure, and he was really good dude, and he was asking me, what do you think we need to do about your blood pressure? So I know what I've got to do. Stop eating the crap and get out and do some more exercise and stuff like that. He said, yeah, great, and then he said, well, okay, we'll monitor it, see how we go, So it's, but the thing is, I think talking to healthcare professionals, I think sometimes you're up there, it's like there's us, then you, and then God, and I think we struggle with that, not that authority, so but I think it's going there as, being and coming out with the right decisions. I think Sue mentioned it as well. Sorry, Sue, who had their hand up first? Was you, Sue? Go for it.
I just wanted to say real quick, Pete, I love that idea, because I can't tell you the number of the people that I work with in pain who had a massive pain flare and they tell me all about it, but they don't see their doctor for 2 more weeks. And when they go there, they're like, well, I forgot about this and I forgot about that, because you just can't imagine in that moment that you'll ever forget how bad it was, or what it felt like, or how long it lasted, or the thoughts around it. So I love that. I love that you said that. It's interesting with both Hem and Helen, what you were saying, because, you know, Hem, when you got that prescription, I thought, oh gosh, of course, you know, here's the doctor saying, well, yes, you want to do that, but here's a prescription. But then I also thought, well, actually, I can't get into my doctor for usually 2 months, so maybe that's a good thing. And then, yeah, so I don't know. It's so complicated with all this stuff, isn't it? Like how we interpret it is so important. Yeah. Anyway, Pete, I love the idea. Yeah, absolutely. I do that for myself, right? We go in there with our agenda, and like you were saying, the healthcare person has their agenda, and yeah, it can be a tough time. Yeah, tough to get everything across on both ends, I think. Yeah,
Thanks.
Toby?
So much, isn't there? These things spiral off in so many different directions. I'm thinking, what a ridiculous system we have, where you have a pain flare up and then 2 months later you go and see somebody. But like, you know, honestly, but anyway, there's another issue. I'm just wondering, I think the idea that difficult conversations can be made somewhat less difficult by a sharing of responsibility for the conversation. And Peter, very much as you said, that sort of, there is a power imbalance, of course there is, but as clinicians we can do a lot to redress that imbalance and to empower people to feel that they have the right to express a view about what they want from this consultation and how they want it to run. We can encourage that, but also think it's something that in patient world people can also be more, because you know, we're talking about, you know, chronic disease self-management ultimately, and that starts from that consult and goes forward. If you're responsible for your health at that point, then you're going to be more responsible and supported going forward. So it's sort of, yeah, it all feels like it ties together in some way, and in a small way, the idea that we encourage clinicians to, you know, to set an agenda for the consult. What would you like to talk about today? It's not a tricky question to ask people, you know, at the get-go. And again, you know, to Hem's example where you got the script, like if the doctor said, would you like me to give you one just in case? You could have said, actually, no, thanks, I'll leave it. But we don't ask, we give, because I think back to maybe Amy's talking, this thing about being empowered as a clinician, you got to do stuff and you got to be there to, you know, and it's just, you know, it goes off track so easily, doesn't it? That sort of ego-driven thing. Anyway, lots of things. Virginia, were you next, I think?
Yeah, I think so. And Toby, it's great. You know, a lot of what I was going to talk about is what you talked about is this power imbalance, building on what you and Pete have talked about. And how do we narrow that as someone's living with pain and going clinician after clinician after clinician? And when their treatments didn't work, and then you felt like there was gaslighting, there was something else, you shut down. Instead of saying to them, this is not working, or you know, and how do we let people who are living with pain know that you can question this, you can ask them questions, you can say, this is not working for me, or no, I don't agree with you, you know, because we do have a responsibility too, but it's really hard for us to cross that line, because there's that, I know in mine growing up, it's a respect thing too. You know, I don't want to say, oh God, this is nonsense, you know, because I don't know what is and isn't nonsense at that point, because I've got this pain. So I think there is, you know, how do we together bridge that gap?
Helen?
So something Toby was saying, it just made me think that sometimes what I do at the beginning of a session with somebody is actually make or give the choice around communication itself by saying, would you like to tell me you know, what's been going on, or update me, or whatever it is, or would you like me to ask you questions to direct this a little bit? Because I find it is sometimes difficult for people to know where to start and what to tell me and how much to tell me. So even that simple choice right at the beginning of how are we going to communicate in this session? Would you like to steer it more, or shall I steer it more? It is going to be both of us, but even offering that simple choice, I think, can be helpful.
Thanks, Helen. Apologies, Jerry, I didn't see you in there.
No, I bit in early, so I was waiting for a couple passes, Pete. So that's good, because you know, and I must say I'm a little disappointed that you're getting away from the chaos that we have to raise our hands now, but that's all right. We can take that up on another day. When I heard you say that, I was like, oh my gosh. I want to go back to what you were saying, Pete, and what I bring to this group, right? So this opportunity, right, to get out of this space. So here we are, because Pete's the first one who brought this up, right? This opportunity to go, what do we need to be successful in the room? I'm talking from the healthcare side, by the way, the healthcare side, because right, we got to be balanced. The patients have to come in ready, but my God, right, here we go again. They're here for a reason. We chose this side of it. They didn't choose that side. So I'm going to say we have a pretty hefty responsibility and accountability, which Hem already mentioned, which, right, we're not held much accountable to at times. I work with my clients about what needs to be done in this room. What do you need to be successful? Talking to the providers. Then I like to go upstream. What solutions do we have? Pete, you already mentioned it, right? So how do we make sure people know this is available? Because, right, when I start working with some of my clients, I know where the control is, and it's when you call in to schedule or you go online to schedule, right? So the opportunity and the training and the process set up for the people outside of the room to then set that visit up for success. And I have a system, right? Physio, not, you know, not pain related, shall we say, probably a lot of musculoskeletal side, yet could be applied, is setting up the front desk and making sure that we have a process in place that tells the person on the other end, and it's asking questions, right? What's important to you today? What is this, right? Not allowing someone to schedule for low back pain, right? I tell everybody it's unacceptable to have someone on the schedule for low back pain, right? Because if we ask better questions, I had a flare up 2 weeks ago, here we go, right? From, right, an episode here, okay? And then almost asking the question, it wouldn't be quite this way, but what results? What are you looking for from the visit? And I'm like, if we could gather that, think about the power of that and hand that to the provider. By the way, I always tell the providers, you need that 5 minutes before you walk in the room. You don't need that days before. You don't need that hours. So that when I'm walking in the room with Pete, history of low back pain, flared up 3 weeks ago, by the way, at the gym, he can't go to the gym, wants to return to the gym, solutions he's looking for. I'm going to say I've set that provider up for success. Now we can talk about all the other dynamics and everything, but right, so how do we engage the team to do the work further upstream, not to take the load off the provider, but just to set the provider and the patient up for success in the room. So that's what I wanted to share is I think what Pete shared is so valuable. Then how do we incorporate it further upstream? And I think it could be done with a lot of different types of patients, not just MSK side.
You just remind, oh, sorry, Amy, I'll just see your hand. Sorry, love.
That's okay. Kind of bouncing off of a variety of thoughts that have just been mentioned. I mentioned in the chat that oftentimes the reason people don't speak up, it really generally is from the trauma of being in pain or relational dynamics that we have outside of the therapist's office, beliefs that we have outside of the therapist's office, which make it very, very challenging to challenge or be honest with a person in a position of authority. I think of my own personal story and a lot of the women that I work with, trying to get them to do the simple things that Jerry just asked, right? And that's a fantastic plan. But if my patient or my client is walking into that office with an uninformed person that doesn't have the context of being in pain, it's still going to be a disaster, because my person's afraid of being abandoned if they object or say that it's not working or like try to disagree in any way, because that's what's happened with maybe a parent or a spouse or a series of boyfriends or girlfriends. Like there's an emotional history that comes with the person in pain. And oftentimes it's the argument that you have with your loved one about the laundry. It's not about the laundry. It's not about the dishes. It's about something else. And the same thing is happening with our healthcare providers, at least from the patient end. And so that's one of the things that I work on a lot with my clients is what's driving your fear to speak up? What's driving your fear to say, I hate coming home with bruises from cupping, and I know it's my clinician, like they think that this is going to solve everything, and I don't know how to tell them, right? So like the person in pain comes in and they're all cheery and they're like, yep, felt better, when they didn't. And thank you so much for helping, but you didn't. And there's no way the clinician can operate under that. Like unless you're aware, like unless you're super aware, you can't win in that situation. And so I think that's when, because I'm also a PTA, like in my role as a physio assistant, that's where I've got to be like, okay, it's all right if you don't agree with me. It's okay if this didn't work. It's all right if you hated that thing, right? Giving them permission to disagree or to not, like that. I'm with you no matter what. If this thing didn't work, we'll try another thing, right? So like taking that next step to give permission for the subordinate to disagree.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Was it you next, Sue?
Yeah,
Hopefully,
yeah.
Sue.
I love that, Amy, and I think it comes back to Helen's question. What do you want to talk about today? And so it kind of is in a line with that, like what is on your mind, you know, and what you're talking about, and what Jerry is talking about. These are really specific things. I have low back pain. This happened 2 weeks ago, and whatnot. But we're, you know, you sort of alluded to it a bit, Amy, about the beliefs. Like the beliefs, I'm not believed when I go to this. Like when you have someone come in that has that layered on top of it, that's a whole different thing, isn't it? It's just. It adds everything up. So yeah, I think one of the moments that I really liked in my personal history as a person that works with people in pain is when I stopped trying to figure out what they're coming in for. And Jerry, I totally hear what you're saying, and I think that's a great idea. And I'm not trying to sort of be opposite to that. But when I talk to people, I talk about dinosaurs in the room. That's to me, that's getting into your flight or fight, right? And so then you have like dinosaurs because they're stressed, or dinosaurs from anxiety, or dinosaurs because you drove 2 hours to come see me. And so the thing is, you know, I think they're coming for this. We've got a plan. Come back in 2 weeks. We'll do follow up about X, Y, or Z. And they come into my room. They don't want to talk about X, Y, or Z. Hopefully, have the foresight to ask Helen's question of what do you need, you know, but I used to get so frustrated because I'm like, oh, why won't, you know, we were supposed to follow up and I had plans for this. And, you know, the moment that I stopped anticipating what we were doing and being really open to where they were, I think that was a really great moment for me personally, because I just felt like, you know, yes, we talked about this stress bit and we gave a plan, and yes, we're not talking about that today and how it went, but they've got the plan. So they have steps forward. And now we're talking about this, and it's a different plan. Wasn't where I thought we'd go today, but you have steps forward. And unfortunately, I think we can't really do this until we have a lot of understanding of the chronic pain in the nervous system. I think you'd have to be a more experienced clinician, or have the ability to say, you know what, we don't know. Let me think on this. Let me look into this. I think those are all powerful things, but yeah, lots of hands up, so I'll stop. But yeah, just a few thoughts.
Hen?
Yeah, great conversations, isn't it? Yeah, I was thinking, Pete, about how do you make the or how do you make the experience or interaction in the room more meaningful? One thing I often again came from one of the indigenous population of New Zealand, the Maori models of health, and the way it works is there's a sort of a process called Hui process, and in the Hui process, you actually start with a bit of mihi. Mihi's introduction, like who you are and what do you do, sort of thing. And then there's an aspect called whakawhanaungutunga, which is actually a process of establishing connections between the person and and I mean, it's not even the clinician, it's two people, and me trying to sort of understand where they are from, and me also explaining where I'm from. So it's about trying to find connection, and then actually going into the actual kopapa, which is the actual or if the Western word would be agenda of the session. So you spend quite a bit of time making connections and introducing yourself, and then you go into the actual kopapa. So because we often are time driven, we have a purpose, and we go straight into the agenda, and the person in front of me has no idea, like, because they might have seen a lot of physios before, and then when they come to a pain management service, I have to really explain I'm not that sort of physio. So I'm a pain physio. I'm more interested in talking and understanding and supporting, as opposed to fixing and rubbing and massaging and making them do exercise. So it's about creating that safe space at the beginning, and sometimes making it more human to say, look, even though I have experience, I'm here to learn and understand, and support you in your journey. I think that can make that sort of conversation, any conversation, less difficult and more meaningful.
Thanks, Sam. Is it next? You, Jerry, next?
Yeah, I just want to Toby said my favorite word. I took a lot of notes already. Toby said my favorite word, context. I want to set a little context around what I shared. All of us can benefit from work done further upstream, and Pete put it down about creating that experience. So when I shared the example, there is something for all of you in every practice. I've worked with Pete's practice, so I'm not just talking about musculoskeletal. The most important part of understanding this journey and us helping patients and serving patients is us to go further upstream. And the better we understand our journey in the healthcare side of things, the better we can serve people. And I don't think there's a lot of solutions. I've been in this 30 years. I don't think there's a lot of solutions just in talking about the provider with the patient, right? Because I think that's what got us here. So I think as long as we all understand the journey of the people we're serving, and I think about what the work Him's doing, and I'd love to talk about with you, him offline, about the work you're doing. I want to learn more about it. The cultural side of it, right? So how better do we understand the person who's going to be in the room with us? And better understand is you get to define with the people you're working with. Yet my challenge to everybody watching this from inside healthcare is to better understand the journey of the people we're serving. And then we can build out the experience. I guarantee you, every industry on the face of the earth does this, except for healthcare. And I'll speak for healthcare in the US. I won't speak for anybody outside of the US. They understand the people they serve, and then they build everything around that person they serve. And they build everything around that person they serve to make them successful in their journey with their business. And I'm like, how can't healthcare be doing this? Everything I've learned came from outside healthcare. So I just want to make sure we all understand that I'm not talking about, right, getting just these objective things from people. I sit down with people all the time. How can we better? I look at web forms. What's a better question to ask, right? How can we be this far ahead of the game when we talk to that person? So I just want to make sure there's context around what I shared earlier, and around how I feel this can be done. Again, back to Peter's question, how do we improve the experience? We have to know their journey first, and it'd be right. And then, by the way, I didn't do any of this when I had my own business, right? I didn't do any of this. Didn't have any of it in my own business. So I just want to make sure that the context of where I'm coming from is out there. Appreciate it.
Grainne?
Hello. Talk about difficult conversations. There's nothing harder than coming in halfway through a conversation. I can only apologize to everybody. I had something else that came up with a family member that I had to deal with. So, but one thing it makes you realize is actually one of the important things about dealing with difficult conversations is initially when you come into one and you don't know what's going on because you don't know what's been said up until now, or who it's been said to, is that power of just sitting there quietly and listening for a little while and trying to get a sense of what's going on. And it all sounds really interesting. I can't wait to watch the rest of it back. But what struck me, just as I was listening to what everybody was saying, and the thing that I feel I see a lot and hear a lot from clinicians and this is only, I can only obviously speak for the UK and speak for sort of the struggles of clinicians in the NHS, is that I think an awful lot of clinicians, healthcare professionals, struggle to feel uncertain and struggle to feel that they don't have all the answers for people. And that, I think, can lead to a heightened sense of challenge in consultations, because they struggle to maybe just sit back and feel really comfortable saying, I'm not really sure what's going on here, or I don't really know. Let's have a think about it. I'm not really sure I get, that I'm really certain what you want. Or we go into it, in the UK often, certainly in chronic pain conditions, you might get longer times with people, but in many other consultations they've had upstream, as you've talked about there, Jerry, but by the time they get to us, they're already feeling quite threatened by their previous interactions with healthcare professionals, because it's a 5-minute appointment with a different GP every time they see them, and they're having to constantly repeat their stories and their journey, which Pete and I had a really interesting conversation with another person that goes on the pain cafes that we run, and then we had a really interesting conversation about how frustrating that is as a person with pain, to constantly have to see a new person, and they've got your notes there, but you're having to tell your story again, and you're having to tell it really quickly. And then that sense of what came out really powerfully was what can make a consultation really tricky for us at the pain end of things is actually they've been feeling very judged. So they go and see somebody and tell them, well, this is what I've done before and this is who I've seen. And this lady sort of said, well, one of the things you hear a lot is, oh, well, I wouldn't have done that. And she said, that's not helpful to me. That feels judging to me. And it's a very innocent thing sometimes that we say, maybe without thinking, or going, oh, or even your facial expression might say, oh, I wouldn't have done that. But that can feel like, well, I didn't have any choice. So I think we can often, depending the systems that we work in and the time that we have with people and the way that we get to work with them can make those conversations difficult as well. Not only the challenge of people feeling able to be really honest with healthcare professionals, and I think we see that a lot, don't we, of just that real challenge of feeling that it's okay actually to go, I remember when I was a younger clinician many moons ago, we used to always sort of feel that people would come in and they just didn't want to tell the nice young physio lady that the exercises hadn't been helpful at all. So people would just come in and go, yeah, no, that's all right, because they don't want the confrontation, because you're a young person and they don't want to upset you. But actually it's really important that they feel confident enough to go, this isn't working. So yeah, so that's my halfpenny worth just to pitch in. But yeah.
Helen?
Yeah, some great thoughts there. I want to come back around a little bit to what Hem was saying and pick up some threads around what we're talking about in terms of communication, and also this whole power dynamic that's there. And just thinking about when during training and young clinician, and how I try to be so professional, and we have these professional boundaries, and in this give and take of communication, we taught that we must be the ones that are receiving more of the information, not giving much, and something that here in South Africa we also do, like Hem was saying, is we start off with these greetings of Sawubona, I see you, and how are you? And there's quite an exchange. So even if you go into the supermarket, you don't just walk up to someone and say, can I have this off the shelf? It's, hi, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? There's a whole exchange. And as a clinician, I have I think tried to lower the boundaries in a way, and be the human and the clinician, and allow for more of an even exchange. Of course, it's not totally even. So what I'm talking about is sharing some information from myself, from my life, to equalize that dynamic, so that there is a give and take. There is more mutuality. Of course, there will always still be more giving of information from the person who's consulting me, because that's why they're here. That's what they're paying for. I am receiving that and trying to respond. But starting off with that exchange, I think, really equals. It just helps to lower that power dynamic. And for someone to say to me, "How are you and how are your children?" and to even respond to that and not just go, "Fine, but back to you." I think just simple human interactions and exchanges that we need to bring back into our clinical practice.
Thanks, Helen. I just want to jump in myself. I'll tell you what, Jerry's mentioned the phrase a couple of times now about upstreaming. And is everybody familiar with that term, upstreaming, at all? Yeah, because it's about Jerry. I mean, how I look, well, upstreaming to me is about there's a problem. It's well. Should I tell the story, Jerry? I think that'd probably be easier. Well, the upstreaming, it's called upstreaming, downstreaming, and there's so I'm sitting there. I live by a river, so I'm laying down by the river, enjoying myself a nice summer's afternoon. All of a sudden, someone's coming down the river. Help me, I'm drowning. So I jump in the river, pull them out, resuscitate them, call an ambulance, and off they go. Like carry on, lying by the river. And then another one comes down. Help me, I'm drowning. So again, I'm jumping in, pull them out, resuscitate them, call an ambulance. Now, after the fifth one, I'm thinking to myself, there's something wrong here. So I better go upstream and find out what the problem is. And as I go upstream, I find out that people were looking into the river to see all the boats, etc. The fence is broken, and they keep falling in. And I like that scenario. Have I got it right, Jerry? It's pretty, yeah. And what I like about that is that, see, we're all singing from the same hymn sheet here. Is what I'm getting on this conversation. And I'm thinking to myself, how we see, and we, us like the patients sort of coming to see you, I feel like I would get a better deal from you guys than I would the normal ones I see. But in the story, the downstream and upstream, and it's going upstream and finding why these people falling in the river. In other words, why are these people having difficult consultations, perhaps with a colleague or something. So the question I'm going to ask you, throw it out there, how would you deal with that, knowing if you've got a colleague who's pretty naff at doing consultations, how would you deal with that colleague? Would you would go and say to them, I'm getting a lot of your patients, they're coming in, they're very angry, that they don't feel that they're being listened to, etc. So what would you do about those? How would you deal with that difficult conversation about so that they change the ways that they're seeing patients? Sorry, Sue, you're going to have a go?
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to your answer because I actually lived through this.
Oh.
I had somebody who, and we worked very, very hard. It was an interdisciplinary clinic, physicians, pain physicians, and then a whole rehab team, OT physios, pharmacy, social work. And a new physio came in, and she was just, the information she was giving was not, I'm just going to say, helpful to the best of it. And so what we used to do is have everyone come into the initial education piece, so we all talk the same language. I thought, well, okay, if we're all giving the same education and all giving the same bit, then we can do this, but that wasn't enough. So I'm looking forward to to hearing what else I could have done, because it's yeah, all of her clients came to me and I had to undo that. And who was it that said about our face showing it? I think it was Grainne. Yeah, just like, yeah, oh, I hope my face didn't show how frustrated I was with having to undo all that misinformation. All right, looking forward to answers.
Thanks, Sue. Toby?
I'm not sure I got the answers, Sue, because but I must say, it's not, when I was thinking about this talk today, a difficult conversation between healthcare providers wasn't one of the areas I thought we'd go. But Pete, you're absolutely spot on. You've hit a big, because I think we've all experienced this, right? Because we're fabulous clinicians, of course we are, but the people we work with often are pretty, you know, just one of those things, isn't it? But I guess, so what popped into my head first is, before even thinking about intervening, because this is an intervention, is I guess depends on the scenario, but if it's still where the patient's going to keep seeing that clinician, I want to be really start with that patient first and say, listen, you just told me how awful it was with Dr. Bloggs over there. Would you like me to speak to Dr. Bloggs? Because what I don't want to do is go and speak to Dr. Bloggs without checking this with you first, and then Dr. Bloggs tears into this, but you know, so that first thing is just getting a mandate, getting permission, because the patient may say, actually, don't go anywhere near it. I don't want to. That's bad enough as it is. So the first thing I reckon in that process would be to check with the patient, if it's depending on what the context is. And I guess the second thing, well, I'm sure people got lots of thoughts. The second thing, I mean, it's a tough one, and you know, hats off to people who are going to sit down and intervene with their colleague, or at least raise a concern with the colleague. And I'm not talking about mandatory reporting, you know, stuff. This is like just not dealing well clinically. Would be to start off with the conversation about, gee, I saw Mrs. Bloggs. She seemed pretty unhappy about what happened last time. What did you think went on? What was your sense of that last conversation? And make that the starting point. And then offering, oh, maybe we could think about it doing this way. But yes, it's a really it's a tricky area to go in, but yeah, really important one, Pete. So interested to see what other people's thoughts are.
Thanks, Toby. Grainne?
Yeah, I mean, that is literally the other side of difficult conversations, isn't it? You know, it's we've all worked with colleagues, you know, as I say, we're all feeling that we're on the right side of history when it comes to consultation skills. But I personally probably find those conversations always more difficult than any tricky conversation I've ever had with somebody who's in front of me struggling with pain, because one of the things I often find is that the most limiting factor in that conversation is whether or not that other individual is open to exploring how they've been working isn't working for that patient. And if you've not, you know, I've had a few that have gone really well. So in a role where I was a therapy lead, and therefore part of my job was sort of doing supervision with other clinicians and sitting in on their sessions and things like that. You know, clinicians who maybe struggled initially or had you know, who worked in a different way, and then they were seeing people with chronic conditions, and initially how they approached things maybe wasn't quite right, but when they were open to trying to understand why people weren't wanting to come back to them, or why, you know, it needs to have that openness, and then actually that conversation becomes a lot less difficult, because they're interested in learning and improving themselves, or interested in changing and improving the experience of people seeing them. But unfortunately, I do still find there's a number of people where I've been trying to speak to them about these things, and the sense of their own rightness and their own surety in their approach and their own confidence, overconfidence, you know, whatever it might be, that they, you know, they find it. And these have been often people in actually quite high levels of power within, you know, because it's often a certain type of personality that perhaps gets to sort of levels where you have to be a very confident individual in your, and that's where that, and I don't know what the answer always is to that, but I think what you said there, Toby, which is exploring that just with a kind of thing of, you know, how did you, I'm really interested to know how you felt that consultation went with this person, because they've told me their version of it. I'm really interested in hearing how it went from your side, and just trying to at least sort of open that that side of the conversation up. Yeah.
Thanks, Grainne. Jerry?
I'm going to follow the upstream theme here. And again, speak about US. First off, I typed in all caps over in the chat regarding the communication, right? We're not, no one's taught that here in medical school. You can go to school for 30 effing years in healthcare and no one's ever going to teach you, right, communication skills. So it's not taught here. Not only is it not taught here, but it's, I mean, it's insanely void. So there's one point there. So when we talk about difficult conversations, I'm going to argue that nobody comes out of school ready to have, by the way, we haven't even judged if people can have, of which you guys are all talking about now, a normal conversation. So I just want to throw my 2 cents in there, but that's going upstream again, in my opinion, is how do we start these courses, classes, role playing, things like that earlier in a professional's journey so they're ready to come out. So I think if we really want to solve the problem or start to solve a problem, then that has to be on the list. Second thing about this question that got put out about difficult conversations between providers, I think creating this, and by the way, I stumbled into all this. So I'm not claiming I knew this. I'm not claiming I practiced this. I had my own business. I guarantee you I wasn't doing what I'm about to share with you. So I don't claim to come from this as the person who knew this from day one. This word culture, I think, is really important in this conversation. And in a practice, in a healthcare practice, it is management's responsibility and above to understand who are we serving, here we go again, and what journey are they on, and building a culture around serving this person, which is, I say, building out the experience. Now, we can serve multiple clients, we can serve multiple diagnoses, yet once we understand that, then we can start to share better during interview processes, during interviews, in our advertisements for future practitioners into our business. We can share this culture of how we approach people here. And the interview process and the onboarding process and the training process, I believe, is the upstream solution to these conflicts downstream of if all the objectives have been set in this, and I'm sitting across from someone whose patients, and by the way, I had to do this in my own business late in my time in my business, and it was easier to have the conversation when I knew how the person had come in. I knew what was shared with the person. I knew what boxes had to be checked. And these weren't always like billed properly. It was like, how do we talk to people, right? Things have to be covered in the visits. A lot of things that I believe could happen. And again, back to Pete's example. So I'm just going to bring in my experience of saying that a lot of this can be managed better for the organizations. I'm not saying the people on here who are willing to do the work upstream. And when we choose to go work in organizations that haven't done this very well, then we have to be cognizant of that also, because we're putting ourselves into a position where it's going to be very difficult, or we may have to have these conversations more often. So just another thought here on the upstream approach of difficult conversations and all this other stuff.
Thanks, Jerry. Grainne?
Well, it just struck me that if we're going that sort of that way upstream, one way to make or to create better clinicians who can communicate better, because I agree that it's not focused on enough in many of the medical courses. I think in occupational therapy and psychology, obviously it's very much a part of what those clinicians do. But as a physio, I know it's definitely not as focused on as it used to be. When I qualified, we did quite a lot of work on communication skills, and we did quite a lot of role playing and videoing each other and having to look at how we talk to each other. But that was because we had a 4-year degree, whereas now they're squeezed into, a lot shorter time. But one of the key ways to do it is to actually properly integrate lived experience into students' journeys, where they're actually not confronted isn't the right word, because you're obviously not going in there to confront them as students, because that would be terrifying, but to make them aware before they go out into there, to have those conversations, but on an equal footing. To have somebody come in, like you say, and say, do you know, when I'm in a consultation, it feels quite scary, or it feels that there's a real power imbalance, or I struggle to feel when I went to see people that I could be honest with them, because they won't hear that within their degrees necessarily, and they won't necessarily, get the time and space in student placements to really get that experience. So your key way of doing that is get more people with lived experience and a desire to talk about it into university degrees as equal partners in there, not just as somebody that comes in as a body on a day to be a patient for an examination or something like that.
Thanks, Grainne. Virginia?
Just to add on, I'm fortunate here that within one of our universities here, they bring in, I just got an email today, myself and a couple other people with lived experience at the end of their physios section they have on chronic pain, which again is small. Here are stories, so it's starting listening to the stories. And I know one of the universities in Canada, and I don't know if this is just something they're starting to roll out, is trying to get enough people out. I think they have to have a one-on-one with the physio student and a person with lived experience to listen to the stories. So I think it brings back to not about how we talk to people, how we listen to people, how we validate them, and how we listen to them, and listen why their stories are important. So I'm seeing progress. It's small, but I take whatever I see as positive.
Thanks, Virginia. So.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, both of you. That's fantastic work. And you're right, Grainne. We as an OT, we did have to learn not just how to communicate, but also how to sit, where other people should be sitting, all that kind of stuff. If someone has a high level of anxiety or fear, you don't put them beside a window, kind of thing. Like there's a lot of, and I wonder now, because now it's a 2-year program, and I wonder if they're still doing that. I hope they do. I do teach at the University of British Columbia, and in what you're saying, I wish I could bring people with lived experience in, but what I do is I have a recording of 2 of my former clients, and so they talk about pain physically, what that is like for them, what's difficult for them, and then I go over the science, and then they talk about cognition and what that's like for them to live with difficulties with cognition. Then I go into the science of that. So there is really easy ways to do that, but I think, yeah, I think I'm really loving how much patient engagement there is, or people with lived experience. But I think it's a lot easier to incorporate that than we think it is. So I hope that catches on elsewhere. Yeah.
I think us self-managers or people with a living experience of pain, I think we're getting invited more and more now. If I think back in the day, that wasn't the norm, but I get invited to present to like Virginia said, going to the schools, like the physio schools, and sadly not the medical schools, yeah, but mainly the physical therapy schools, and I just talk about self-management really, like I tend not to go into my story too much, because I'll get fed up talking about it. That's the main thing about it. I mean, that's why I like AIP. I don't know if you've seen AIP, where people can go and have a chat with me, and I haven't got to sit there, because I mean, Toby is actually part of my story. I don't know if you know that. As I met Toby Toby was the psychologist on my program in '96. So Toby is actually part of my story. So
I was 4 at the time, and
Well done.
yeah, and yeah, so I mean, I've always give the program a mention, like, because about that program. And I was just sitting here actually thinking, Toby, about what you guys were like on the program, And I think that the one thing I always remember, there's the listening part of it. Yeah, listening to because I think a lot of the people on the program, probably including myself, is saying, well, what's going on, like, you know, but we're not saying what's going on. We knew what was going on within the program, but it was that understanding. It's like what. So I think people with pain, we just get mixed up. You know, we get anchored into the medical model, and
Yes.
the different messages we get. You know, it all gets a bit jumbled up, a little bit like juggling spaghetti. And I think what I from the pain management program, well, and the input program, was that that those they're willing to listen to, you know, the concerns and experiences I've had. And I think I always remember the very first session with old Charles Pyther, and he went around the room and asked people how many years we've been living with pain, like, you know. I can't remember the exact number of my one, but I know it was in the hundreds, like, you know, we're all, you know, had pain for so many years, etc. And for me, that was really powerful because it was being recognised, really, and it showed us that we're not, you know, we're just one of many of people. And I don't know, I don't know if they, I don't know about Toby, if you were taught, you know, the listening skills or something. I don't know, but that's the thing I always take away. We were listened, you know, people were willing to listen to us, like, you know.
Yeah, hey, it's nice that I'm pleased that that's been an enduring sort of memory of yours, that you were heard. And I think to point Jerry made earlier about culture and the culture of a workplace and the culture of a pain center and a pain unit and a pain team, really powerful, and input had a wonderful culture of respect for patients, and patients being the experts of themselves, not us, and all those good things. But just back to the topic of difficult conversations, it also just reminded me of what you're saying there, Pete, about one thing that I think makes conversations less difficult with patients when working in these interprofessional teams is having that common understanding amongst team members. You know, we're talking earlier about that sort of tricky thing with a clinician who's not practicing well, but even just down to teams working in sync, and you kind of referencing each other and referencing concepts. You know, I'm talking about not just in, you know, kind of pain management programs, but outpatient services, whatever, where there's a cohesion about what's being discussed. Because I don't know we'll have time for this, but I was just wondering, there's another difficult conversation, isn't there? We've talked about kind of patients who are pretty aware and coming into consults and not getting well, but there's also a group of folks, Peter is saying, the sort of spaghetti tangle where you're looking for the cure. You're looking for the thing that's going to fix you. And you don't want to chat for an hour about how I'm feeling. I want you to put your hands on me and fix this thing. That's a typical conversation too as a clinician, how you negotiate that one. So I don't know we'll have time to get onto that, but yeah, that's not unheard of. I think Grainne, you next.
Yeah, sorry, you know, I may have arrived late, but I'm making up for it now by getting my hand up as many times as I can. There was a couple of things in there that kind of struck, and if we've got time, I'll jump onto the people with different expectations on our pain management programs that we always used to run. The thing that used to frustrate the psychologists, nurses, physios, OTs in the program was that consistently when we asked patient what was the session that they got most of out of the program, it would be the 1 hour long talk that 40-minute talk that they got from the pain consultant. So you come in once during the whole program, do a 40-minute talk, and all the patients, it was just so wonderful. But I think what we took that is not that what we were doing wasn't good and wasn't helpful, but they almost expected to be listened to by us. They certainly expected to be listened to by the psychologists and the OTs and the other clinicians in the pain service, but that their experience of medical staff was that they didn't have the time and weren't listened to. And so that was because they hold often in a healthcare environment the most power, the consultants, the medical staff. The fact that one of them took the time to come and just talk to them all in a group and talk to them all and chat with them and engage with them was so potent. So, you know, definitely getting in there with medical professionals and helping them is really important. My second thing was that, well, it's really good that there are lived experience voices being invited in to talk about chronic pain, thinking back to sort of upstreaming stuff, at some point, every person who's now got chronic pain and is now really, really struggling was a person with a new, perhaps MSK or a new pain problem. And so actually, maybe we need to, in those courses, just rather than see the lived experience person as the person that comes in at the end of your little module on chronic pain, have that woven through the whole course as much more of a normal thing that kind of gets on. And finally, maybe in the long run, then also having people to come in and talk about neurodiversity and what it's like to struggle with or to engage with healthcare if you if you're on an autistic spectrum, or you have another neurodiversity, or if you do struggle with anxiety and other things like that. And I'll be quiet now again.
Thank you, Helen. Can I, Helen, after Helen, I've just put a message out. We're coming to the end of the conversation, but can we start thinking about what will be our take-home messages from tonight? But Helen, carry on.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to introduce a whole new topic, but just talking tonight about mostly clinicians' communication skills, but also the importance of that mutual responsibility and difficult conversations. It makes me think about people I've worked with who struggle to have these conversations with employers or family members, so beyond health professionals, and how I have had clients who've become, social phobic, agoraphobic, because for example, with fibromyalgia, the struggle to explain what fibromyalgia is to anybody. They just don't even want to go out anymore because they don't want to face that conversation. So just a little thought, something that I've done with some of my clients is almost practice an elevator pitch for your condition. So what's your elevator pitch for fibromyalgia? In 3 sentences, how could you convey what you want to someone without giving it all away, without exposing your whole self, but in a way that keeps the conversation moving and you feel comfortable? So working with people living with pain in terms of their own communication to others beyond health professionals is also important. Yeah.
Thanks, Helen. So we're coming to the end, and it's gone goes very quickly. Can I just go around the group and ask everybody what would be your take-home messages from tonight or today's conversation?
I think my number one, so I'm going to refer back to my notes where I started because I scrambled and wrote a bunch of stuff beginning. I think Toby mentioned context. I think context is key. Listening is key. And then the last thing I'm going to say is, and I typed in again, and Helen, I think everybody has, obviously we all default to our biases and our beliefs. So hold on, I'll say that out loud first. So I heard everybody reinforce what I already believed. So I said it out loud. Is that right? We've got, and by we, I'm talking to the providers and the people in healthcare. I've been in this forever, and we spend most of our time here. And I believe success for healthcare and success for the people we serve is when we widen the binders, we understand people's, and just bear with me on the terminology, we understand the journey that people are on sooner than when they get in front of the provider. That is a solution, a real solution, right? If it's back to Pete's, how much longer, how many more years can we keep jumping in the water, pulling people out till we go upstream? And by the way, there's only a little bit we need to grab at each place, right? It's not like we got to grab it all. So if we grab a little bit here, grab a little bit here, grab a little bit here, by the time they walk in the room to see any of the providers, I believe we have the leverage to make the best of that visit, because all we need to do is make the best of that visit. So context, listening, and understanding journey is better. That's my takeaway.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
Shall I go around it? So you all seem a bit shy, probably a bit flagging a bit. Grainne, what's your take-home message?
My take-home message is that we need to get more normality of new clinicians speaking on a equal level with people who have lived experience of the conditions that they're seeing them with, and speaking to them as equals, and really being able to just, not just when they're in a consultation with them, but whether they're as students or as part of their newly qualified work, of actually really just listening to people who, you know, who've got that. That has to happen. That's got to be the future.
Thanks very much. So
Yeah, I think it wasn't really said or articulated so much, but when you're working with someone, just be really aware of where they are. When someone's highly surviving or highly stressed, it's hard to take in any information. And so just to sort of be aware, you know, and that can go to culture, where they are culturally, where I am, all those kind of biases for that. Just to sort of be present and aware of the people in the conversation.
thank you very much. Toby.
I'm sold on the upstream idea, Jerry. It's upstream is in my head now, and I'm thinking the solution is going to be people with lived experience. I think that's the folks who are going to make the difference. That's the sideways view of this, and it's up to our healthcare systems and organizations to empower people with lived experience to be able to be that upstream intervention point, so we're not just scrambling always at the other end. That's my firm belief.
Thanks, Toby. And Amy?
I would say just understanding that conversations are hard without context and understanding. That understanding is really the foundation of any conversation. And so whether that's with a loved one, with friends and family, with a doctor, you know, on both ends, the doctor to the patient and the patient to the doctor, we've got to have understanding of the systems we're in, of the places that we've been, how we got where we are. And that sounds kind of silly for a medical appointment, but it's true, and it's where the foundation of conversation happens. So understanding.
Thanks, Amy. And Helen?
I would say that my main takeaways are, as a clinician, that I'm a human first and a clinician second, and that I need to continue to cultivate humility and curiosity.
Oh, that word curiosity's come up again. We talked about it last time, I think, and it's great. I love it. And last but not least, Virginia.
And I'm going to say more for people who live with pain is to, if you're not feeling heard, tell the clinician you're not feeling heard. Ask them to just stop the conversation, bring it back, because I think we struggle with that. We just shut down instead of saying, you know, I don't think you're getting what I have. And if this is not the connection for you, you can go to others and share with your families. You know, I think we go into what I did for years, thinking, because I got judged so much, that maybe not everybody's going to understand me. But you know what, there's going to be that person out there who's going to. And if your families, you're sharing them what it's like, you're going to probably have a bigger support network, which is really important.
Well, thanks, everyone. If you can stick around after I stop recording so we can sort out a thing for next time, and also another date. But for those watching, listening to this conversation, we hope that you all found it very interesting. I do, as usual. These sort of conversations put wings in my sails, really, like, you know, thinking, because make me stop and think about what can I do better. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you again soon on another Pain Toolkit Conversation. Take care. Look after one another. Ciao.